As someone who saw this 45-minute gameplay demo, allow me to say that you should temper your expectations. Oh. Welcome back to Too Tall Desk. Today, we're back on Cyberpunk 2077. As most of you know, I like to spend a lot of time talking about consumer advocacy and making sure that gamers aren't being ripped off or consumers aren't being ripped off and calling out companies for doing the terrible things that they do. But sometimes, and if you've noticed a lot recently, specifically the last 3 videos, I've spent most of my time actually defending artists, developers, studios who are trying to see their vision through, who are trying to put something out there, what they see, what their source material dictates, the way that they want it to be put out there. Not the way journalists and just genuinely upset people want these things to be put out into the world as. Now, I want to make something very clear. I don't, despite what you may believe, have a vendetta against mainstream journalism. But what keeps happening, and the problem with these things, is that journalists keep writing articles that are not based objectively on what they should be based on, and then a bunch of people read the articles, and because they have a blue check mark, unlike us here on YouTube, everybody seems to believe that these things are real things, and these things should be things that they believe in and take as Bible and move forward with. The reality is that clearly a blue check mark does not make you smarter than anybody else, obviously. And I don't want to single out this particular article, which I'm going to talk about, reference, and I'll put a link to. I don't want to single out this particular article because this is not the first time I've seen this. It's actually the 5th time in the past week I've seen an article about this very thing, but today is the first time I'm going to talk about it. The Six Axes, which I believe started as a PlayStation-based website, recently put out an article about the 45-minute behind-closed-doors demo that was shown at E3 of Cyberpunk 2077 by CD Projekt Red. Most people came away from this demo going, oh my god, this looks amazing, you should be stoked, it is just as good as we thought it was going to be. But there's a group of people rising up above that commentary, above those people, and saying, wait a minute, this isn't all that good at all. In fact, there's a lot of problems with this. The problem is that all these problems seem to be based in one reality. Let me read you the first excerpt from this article. This article that, by the way, is titled, Cyberpunk 2077 has grand ideas but some sloppy execution. The first problem that this writer has with the Cyberpunk demo is the same problem I've seen in multiple places. There's this giant character creation system CD Projekt Red is telling the people seeing the demo. It's massive, you can make anything you want. You can make your player look otherworldly, you can make them look inhuman, whatever you want. But in this particular demo, what the journalist saw was the team at CD Projekt, the people giving the demo, make a few quick changes to the base model and walk out. Our writer here says, here is another instance of a bizarre disconnect between what is explained to us by CD Projekt Red and what actually happens in the game. The developer toggles a couple of sliders that makes the shape of V's nose, the protagonist, slightly kinda sorta different and then calls it a day. And we walk out of the customization screen with a generic white as rice, square-jawed V that fails to show off the breadth of customization we were just promised by the studio. I've seen this about 3 times. Yeah. That makes a whole lot of sense. You have a 45-minute demo and a giant character creation system. How many of you guys in the demo want to see us spend 43 minutes customizing our character? Raise your hand. Just this guy? Okay, let's move on. The point of these demos is not to show off character creation. This is the second time the game is really being seen. What did you want them to do during their limited time? Spend 15 minutes creating the next character for the Fifth Element sequel? Of course they only spent a couple of minutes in there. That's how this works. It wasn't because he was a white guy and that's what we wanted to show. No, it wasn't this generic white as rice. It was, this is our base model, we're going to move forward and show you the game. Shocking. But another thing these articles seem to do is kind of insinuate that Keanu Reeves' character is not all that important at all to the game and may not be very involved in the story itself. Even though CD Projekt Red has said he has the second most amount of dialogue, he is basically your sidekick, he is basically a secondary main character. Again, we have another writer in this article saying, Keanu Reeves just makes a couple of snide comments throughout the demo. It doesn't appear to be that involved at all, and our player character doesn't really respond to him at all except for one line at the end of the demo. It'll be interesting to see if he's involved in the story at all or just a series of funny cameos. This has been addressed. You of all people seeing the demo behind closed doors in which CD Projekt Red said all of this should know this has been addressed. And yet here we are with another person trying to swipe these things away simply because, and we're going to get to it, that's right, agenda. See, if the whole plain white as rice male protagonist wasn't your tip-off, what this guy seems to be genuinely upset about is the implications the game makes kind of politically. But it's going to color what he writes about the game itself, so let's start getting to that. He writes, eventually V found their way to Pacifica, a corporation-funded island city intended to serve as a tourist paradise, right until the very corporations who built it abandoned it as the economy collapsed around them. Literally, all these refugees in the demo were specifically of Haitian descent, which is ... weird? There isn't anything inherently wrong with Pacifica being a slum city occupied exclusively by Haitians, but it certainly sends an awkward message. The sloppiness of that message is only amplified by further uncomfortable missteps by CD Projekt Red, like the subtitles for Haitian dialogue going out of their way to replace words like quote-unquote the and they with quote-unquote day and day, D-E and D-E-Y. Which, if any of you know any Haitians, is in fact how those words are often pronounced by their dialect. I was in boarding school, most of my friends were Haitian. That's how they say things. Another moment, he says, that had me uttering yikes under my breath, where our protagonist mocks their Haitian informant, Placide, by mockingly asking, and who are they? Again, D-E-Y. Maybe V's just a scummy lead character, but the further along this demo went, the more I was sure that it would end with a tasteless Ugandan Knuckles meme and my eyes rolling directly out of their sockets. And he finishes that with, after this weird racial BS... Our writer here writes the whole word, but me and you two, I know better. I'm not saying that. No, thank you. Not today, yellow symbol. That is the most in-depth he goes throughout this article. That appears to be his biggest problem. Him and many others are very upset by the fact that this island, Pacifica, is made up mostly of people of Haitian descent, that it's a slum. But what I want to know from these people, like he says, is what is the awkward message that this is sending? What is the awkward message that the people of this island happen to be Haitian? Where is that message? Is the message that these people are genuinely lower income? I don't understand. I don't understand what this awkward message that we're talking about is. Why? Why is everything in this game, everything about Cyberpunk so far, about issues that are non-issues? Who cares? Who cares who makes up the population of Pacifica? This is a fictional story made up of characters, people, places, races that take place in the future based on source material that, by the way, the creator of the source material said, this is all things I'm involved with. I agree with all of this. What difference does it make? And more importantly, let's get to the minutia of his argument here. The big problem is that they replaced the subtitles with the words they and they. Come on. You're upset that they replaced the subtitles with the actual diction that these people speak in? Let me ask you a simple question. I have seen this before. There are people that have lisps, and there are characters in fiction that have lisps. And oftentimes when you see closed captioning, that lisp will be changed to hear the word uttered the way that you would read it. Why is this? Why is this? It's so the deaf or the people using closed captioning can get a better idea of the immersive storytelling happening. This person has a lisp. I know they have a lisp, not just because it reads lisp, but I can hear how he's pronouncing his words or read how he's pronouncing the words. That is the point of subtitles. It's to allow accessibility to storytelling the way the story is being told for people that can't traditionally either A, hear them, or B, better yet, aren't in an environment where it makes sense to do so, or just want subtitles. The better and closer a subtitle can get to how these words are actually being pronounced in the game, the better the experience is for the people using them. I can't believe I am explaining this as an adult in the gaming industry to somebody else who I assume is an adult in the gaming industry. This isn't prejudice. This isn't a problem. This is simply good subtitling. That's all this is. All this is good subtitling. What do you think slang is in subtitling? And let's move past, I want to move past that little itsy bitsy part. I want to move on to this racial BS comment. I would love for somebody in the comments, if you can explain to me, because I am lost. What exactly is racially motivated about, I don't know, filling an island with a group of people of one descent? That's usually how islands work. Like, that's usually how this goes. Islands are usually made up. Guess what, Australia? A lot of Australians there. A lot of Australians there. Cuba? A lot of Cubans. You'd be surprised. A lot of Cubans. The Dominican Republic? You're never going to guess this. Dominicans. So many of them. It's shocking. America, which is not an island, but by the way, is a piece of land, you're never going to guess. And guys, I'm telling you, you won't get this. Americans. Believe it or not. But all of this would be fine, at least not as egregious, if the article stopped there, but it doesn't. He continues on, letting us know that shooting looks a bit improved in this demo, but the weight of the shots and the subdued way they land on enemies' bodies still leaves a little bit to be desired. That the raw brawn of the male version of V does not seem quite as fun to play as the other. And that CD Projekt Red has promised too much, or promised a lot with this title, but between the two demos he's seen so far, in his words, it's shaping up to be a kind of cool open world shooter with some light RPG elements. Keanu Reeves is certainly breathtaking, he finishes with, but it's hard to say the same about Cyberpunk 2077. Essentially, the foundation of this article, the point that this writer is trying to make is that Cyberpunk just kind of looks generic. It looks like just a kind of fun open world game that's not that big of a deal, and we're all getting too excited about it. In fact, he says in his words that we, the player who hasn't seen the demos that he's been privy to, should temper our excitement because it's not shaping up to be all it's promised to be, and yet his only real complaints seem to be that there's an island filled with a group of people he doesn't think should be there, and the subtitles aren't exactly the way they should be. And this is kind of the problem with this blue checkmark brigade that we're getting in mainstream journalism. I want to be very clear, there are a ton of incredible journalists out there, incredible journalists in gaming, hundreds of incredible journalists in gaming, but these articles do not represent those people very well. This is someone that is clearly writing from a bias, and it's not a bias of, oh, I didn't like the last game. It's a bias of, oh, I don't think I like what's going on here politically. That's what this bias is, and that bias is not a good look when you're making a statement about the quality of a game or what you've seen about a game thus far. You cannot write an article asking people to stop being so excited because you, from an emotional standpoint, didn't like something you saw about a storytelling decision that this studio made. The most of this article is complaints about things that have nothing to do with the game itself. The only real complaint he levies at the game is that shooting seems a little bit soft. That's it. That's his only primary complaint, and yet for some reason, we shouldn't be too stoked about the game for that one single small reason. Oh, and by the way, CD Projekt Red didn't want to spend an hour showing you character creation screens because, good lord, that's how all these demos work, right? For those of you that watch this channel regularly, you know what I do over here. Most of the time I am saying, hey, you the consumer, you the gamer, you need to watch out for this. This is not good. This is how these things came to be. This is why this is failing. This is why this isn't doing well. And this is why you need to make sure you don't get your money out of your wallet just yet. Or this is why you should keep your money in your wallet because these things are anti-consumer or not consumer friendly. But there's been a whole lot very recently, especially with the rash of AAA games coming soon, of people seeing good decisions being made and finding inarticulate or kind of ridiculous reasons to be upset by them. Finding reasons to mold a narrative that isn't quite what you'd expect from these games in the first place. And what I mean by that is, instead of talking about, oh, this is great, Call of Duty's getting back to a single player campaign, they're focusing on it, they're removing microtransactions, they're doing all these things, all maps will be free. The focus is now on, well, this game's too harsh, this game's too intense, this game's depiction of war might be a little bit too much for people, and maybe it should be toned down, or maybe it's a little bit too gritty, I guess would be, or raw would be the right word. Now with Cyberpunk, everything looks great, the game looks wonderful, the world looks wonderful, gameplay design looks spot on, everything coming from a studio that, by the way, made one of the masterpieces of this generation, all there, all good, but you know what? That poster of that trends model, that's not, I don't like that very much, so the rest of the game's probably not very good. Or, ooh, those subtitles, they rub me the wrong way. This game's probably not what it should be. Look, I am going to continue to defend games that deserve to be defended. I'm going to continue to talk about the ones that don't. But Cyberpunk right now has not shown anything but greatness, honestly. And sure, there appears to have been some turmoil behind the scenes, but we shouldn't be anything but excited from what we're getting thus far. And I think that there needs to be a place where these kinds of articles that are written for reasons that aren't particularly game related, that places where these should exist, where they don't intermingle with the realities of the actual game. But now I want to know what you guys think. Do you agree with this article? Based on what's being said, obviously you haven't seen the demo. Are you excited about the game? Do you want to see more of the game? Are you withholding, your opinion on it until you see a bit more gameplay? Or are you just stoked because it's coming from a Witcher 3 developer and CD Projekt Red and they're saying all the right things and they're showing all the right things? Where do you land on this whole CD Projekt Red, Cyberpunk 2077 thing? Where do you land on this whole controversy stuff? Let me know the answer to any of those questions down in the comments below. It's up for real conversation. As always, if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button. If you're not subscribed, press subscribe. Put on more gaming analysis and examinations like this a couple times a week. So subscribe. I do have a second channel, like I've been telling you guys. That second channel is called Games vs. Food. I'll link it in the, I guess, the description. You can go check that out if you want. I do more traditional game reviews. Well, they're not traditional. I do game reviews over there, full game reviews. They're weird. You can hit subscribe over there if you want to support. Anyways, yes, Too Tall Desk still exists. And until next time, guys, I'm out.